The cruelest thing a man can do isn't cheating on his wife. It's making her feel invisible while the whole world watches. The crystal chandeliers inside the Grand Astoria ballroom shimmered like falling stars over Manhattan's elite as black SUVs lined the curb outside the hotel entrance on West 57th Street. Women in designer gowns stepped carefully across the marble floor while camera flashes exploded against polished glass walls, capturing every smile worth millions and every secret worth destroying. At exactly 8:12 p.m., William Kensington arrived with Vanessa Hale on his arm. The moment they stepped out of the silver Rolls-Royce, reporters surged forward behind velvet barriers. William wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, his cold blue eyes calm beneath the glow of camera lights, while Vanessa leaned against him in a diamond-covered gown that looked chosen less for elegance and more for attention. "Mr. Kensington, is this your official relationship debut?" one reporter shouted. Vanessa smiled before William could answer. "Tonight is about new beginnings," she said softly, pressing her hand against his chest while photographers practically fought for a better angle. Somewhere inside the ballroom, a violin quartet continued playing as if none of it mattered. But everyone noticed. Because tonight's gala wasn't just another charity event for New York's billionaire class. It had once belonged to Amara Kensington. 3 years ago, the Kensington Winter Foundation Gala had been Amara's dream. She had built it from scratch with handwritten donor letters, endless meetings, and sleepless nights beside floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Back then, people used to say William Kensington was powerful, but Amara made him human. Now her name barely existed in the city anymore. Most people assumed she disappeared after the divorce. Others whispered she'd suffered some kind of breakdown after William left her. The crueler rumors claimed she'd never belonged in Manhattan society to begin with. Vanessa adjusted the diamond bracelet around her wrist as she entered the ballroom beside William. "You nervous?" she asked playfully. William loosened one cufflink without looking at her. "About what?" "About coming back here with me." He glanced around the ballroom, expression unreadable. "Amara stopped being part of my life a long time ago." Vanessa smiled, satisfied by the answer, but William's voice lacked conviction. The ballroom itself looked almost unreal beneath the gold lighting. Towers of white roses stood beside champagne fountains while servers carried trays of imported caviar and crystal glasses through crowds of politicians, CEOs, and old money families. A 30-foot projection screen displayed the Kensington Foundation logo above the stage. But near the entrance, a small bronze plaque still remained untouched beside the donor wall. "Founded by William and Amara Kensington." Vanessa noticed it first. "You should really have that removed," she muttered. William didn't answer. Before he could respond, the ballroom doors opened again. Not dramatically, not loudly, quietly. Yet somehow the entire room shifted. Conversation slowed. Forks paused midair. Even the musicians lost rhythm for half a second. Near the entrance, under the soft glow of golden chandelier light, a woman stepped inside wearing a deep emerald gown that moved like liquid silk against her skin. Her posture was calm, elegant, untouchable. Her dark curls rested against one shoulder, diamond earrings catching flashes of light with every step she took across the marble floor. No one spoke her name at first because disbelief spread faster than sound. Then one older investor near the stage finally whispered the words that silenced the room completely. "Amara Kensington." William turned instantly. And for the first time in 3 years, he forgot Vanessa was standing beside him. The silence inside the ballroom did not feel awkward. It felt dangerous. Amara Kensington stood beneath the golden chandelier light, with one hand resting lightly against the silver handle of her evening clutch, while hundreds of wealthy strangers stared at her like they were seeing a ghost wrapped in emerald silk. Somewhere near the orchestra stage, a champagne glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered against the marble floor. Nobody even turned to look. William Kensington could not move. For 3 years, he had imagined this moment in different ways. Maybe she would return angry, maybe broken, maybe desperate enough to ask for another chance. But the woman standing 20 feet away from him looked nothing like the wife he once left alone night after night inside a penthouse overlooking Central Park. This version of Amara looked untouchable. "That is impossible," Vanessa whispered beside him, forcing a smile that looked thinner every second. "I thought she moved to Atlanta or Paris or somewhere." William barely heard her. Amara slowly removed her black satin gloves as several board members near the entrance immediately approached her with stunned expressions. Mrs. Kensington, one older investor said carefully, "It is incredible to see you again." Amara smiled politely. "It is good to be back in New York." Her voice was calm, warm, controlled. Not a single trace of bitterness. That unsettled William more than anger ever could. Across the ballroom, whispers spread faster than music. "She looks unbelievable. I heard she disappeared after the divorce settlement." "No, I heard she started a company in California." "Wait, is that really Amara?" Vanessa shifted uncomfortably as attention drifted away from her almost instantly. Only 15 minutes earlier, she had been the center of every camera flash in the room. Now photographers were turning their lenses toward Amara so quickly that flashes exploded across the ballroom like lightning. One reporter near the entrance whispered to another, "This is the story now." Amara moved gracefully through the crowd, stopping occasionally to greet donors and former colleagues. William watched powerful men stand straighter when she approached. Women who once ignored her now smiled too eagerly, hoping for recognition. The social hierarchy of the room had shifted in less than 60 seconds, and everyone felt it. Vanessa leaned closer to William. "Say something," she muttered under her breath. "People are staring." But William could not stop looking at Amara, because for the first time in years, he remembered things he had trained himself to forget. The way she used to sit barefoot on the penthouse balcony at midnight with financial reports spread across her lap. The way she memorized the names of every employee in his company. The way she once stayed awake for 36 hours helping him prepare for the biggest merger of his career while he barely thanked her afterward. Back then, he thought loyalty was guaranteed. Like air conditioning in summer or snow in Manhattan winters. Permanent. Automatic. Replaceable. Then Amara's eyes finally met his across the ballroom. No anger. No sadness. No jealousy. Just calm acknowledgement. As if he had become a stranger she used to know. William felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Not guilt. Worse. Fear. Because deep down, standing beneath those golden lights while the entire city watched her reclaim the room she once built beside him, William Kensington realized something terrifying. Amara had not returned to win him back. She had returned because she no longer needed him at all. There was a time when Amara Kensington used to enter rooms quietly because she believed love did not need attention to be real. Back then, she would stand beside William at events just like this one, wearing simple satin gowns while billionaires shook his hand and barely looked at her twice. She remembered spending entire evenings smiling politely while older investors asked William where he had found someone so graceful. As if she had been decoration instead of the woman who helped build half the empire they admired. Tonight was different. Tonight, people moved toward her before she even crossed the center of the ballroom. "Amara, congratulations on the West Coast expansion," a woman from a luxury fashion house said excitedly while reaching for her hand. "Everyone in Los Angeles is talking about your skincare line." Another voice followed immediately after. "I heard Bloom Noir just signed a deal with Sephora nationwide." Vanessa's expression tightened slightly. William noticed it instantly. "What are they talking about?" she asked under her breath. William did not answer because he already knew. 6 months earlier, Forbes magazine had published an article about a mysterious luxury wellness company dominating high-end beauty markets in California and Chicago. The founder's identity had remained mostly private, but rumors spread quickly through business circles. Investors called the company revolutionary because it focused on melanin-rich skincare without marketing itself through stereotypes or trends. The company was elegant, exclusive, sophisticated, and worth nearly $300 million after only 2 years. William remembered reading the article during a flight to London. He had not realized until this exact moment that Bloom Noir belonged to Amara. Across the ballroom, 2 reporters rushed toward her near the Champagne Tower. "Mrs. Kensington, is it true your company just secured international distribution?" one asked breathlessly. Amara accepted a glass of sparkling water from a server before answering calmly. "We are expanding carefully. I want the brand to grow with intention." "And is tonight your official return to New York society?" another reporter asked. Amara smiled gently. "I never left society. I simply stopped attending rooms where I was not respected." The words were soft, elegant, but they landed like thunder beneath the ballroom lights. Several nearby guests exchanged uncomfortable glances while William stood completely still beside Vanessa. Because everyone understood exactly who those words were meant for. Vanessa forced a laugh that sounded too sharp. She certainly rehearsed that line, she muttered. But even she no longer sounded confident. William barely noticed her anymore. His attention remained locked on Amara as memories resurfaced one after another like ghosts refusing to stay buried. He remembered the tiny apartment they shared before Kensington Global became a billion-dollar company. He remembered Amara waking up at 5 every morning to review investor presentations while finishing graduate school at Columbia. He remembered how she once sold her mother's jewelry to help him cover payroll during the hardest year of his career. And suddenly, standing inside the ballroom she once built with him, William realized something humiliating. He had spent years believing Amara needed his last name to survive. But Amara had built an empire after losing everything attached to him. Meanwhile, despite all his wealth, William felt strangely empty watching her shine without him. Near the orchestra stage, an older senator approached Amara warmly. "The mayor has been asking about you all evening," he said. "Apparently, everyone wants a meeting with the woman rebuilding luxury wellness in America." Amara smiled politely while camera flashes reflected against the emerald fabric of her gown. William watched powerful men gravitate toward her effortlessly, and for the first time in his life, jealousy did not feel angry. It felt ashamed, because the woman he once ignored in private had become the most unforgettable person in the room without ever needing revenge to prove her worth. Vanessa Hale had spent 3 years learning how to stand beside powerful men without looking intimidated by them. She understood cameras, social politics, and the silent competition hidden beneath every smile in Manhattan society. But nothing had prepared her for the humiliation of becoming invisible in a room she thought she controlled. "You should go speak to her," Vanessa said quietly as another group of investors gathered around Amara near the ballroom terrace. William finally looked away from his ex-wife. "Why would I do that?" Vanessa crossed her arms carefully, forcing elegance into movements that now felt stiff beneath the weight of public comparison. "Because every person in this room is watching you pretend she does not matter." William adjusted the cuff of his tuxedo without answering. Across the ballroom, Amara stood beneath soft golden lighting while a famous fashion editor laughed warmly at something she had just said. The emerald gown moved effortlessly around her as she walked, elegant without trying. Nothing about her appearance looked desperate for attention. That was what made her impossible to ignore. Vanessa suddenly understood something terrifying. Women like her had always competed using beauty, youth, and proximity to powerful men. But Amara had entered the room carrying something much more dangerous. Presence. Near the orchestra stage, one of William's board members approached him with a glass of whiskey. "You did not tell us your ex-wife was behind Bloom Noir," the older man said carefully. William's jaw tightened slightly. "I did not know." The board member let out a low whistle. $300 million valuation in under 24 months. Investors are calling her the future of luxury wellness. He glanced toward Amara with visible admiration. "Honestly, Kensington, losing that woman may have been the worst business decision of your life." The comment landed harder than William expected. Before he could respond, cameras suddenly flashed near the center staircase as reporters surrounded Amara again. "Miss Bennett," one called out, "can you confirm the rumors that Bloom Noir is partnering with the Kensington Foundation after tonight?" Vanessa's head turned sharply toward William. "Wait, she is using your foundation now." But Amara answered before he could. "No," she said calmly. The Kensington Foundation was never his alone. Silence spread through the nearby crowd. Amara's voice remained smooth, measured, almost gentle. "I built the foundation with him. The Women's Scholarship Initiative, the shelter funding, the educational grants. Those were my projects from the beginning." William felt heat rise slowly beneath his collar because she was telling the truth. And everyone in that ballroom suddenly understood it. For years, magazines had praised William Kensington as a visionary philanthropist while Amara smiled quietly beside him in photographs. Nobody asked who wrote the speeches. Nobody asked who met with struggling mothers in Brooklyn shelters or stayed awake reviewing scholarship applications until 2 in the morning. William had allowed the world to treat her like background decoration because somewhere deep inside himself, he believed she would always remain there. Vanessa stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. Why did you never talk about her like this? William stared at Amara as she accepted another handshake from a senator near the staircase. Because I did not realize what I had until she stopped standing beside me. The words escaped before he could stop them. Vanessa's expression froze for half a second. It was small, barely noticeable, but William saw it, the realization settling into her eyes. Across the ballroom, Amara turned slightly toward the city skyline visible through the massive glass windows overlooking Manhattan. The lights outside shimmered like gold scattered across black water, while camera flashes reflected against the emerald silk of her dress. She looked calm, untouchable, as though heartbreak had not destroyed her but refined her into something sharper and stronger. And standing only a few feet away from the woman he once took for granted, William Kensington finally began to understand the cruel mathematics of loss. The moment a woman stops asking to be valued is usually the moment the world starts seeing her true worth. The orchestra shifted into a slower melody as servers refreshed champagne glasses beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers, but the energy inside the ballroom had changed completely. It no longer belonged to William Kensington or the carefully polished image he had built over the years. Tonight, every conversation curved back toward Amara. Every glance followed her, and Vanessa felt herself disappearing in real time. "I need some air," she murmured before stepping away from William without waiting for a response. Her silver heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she moved toward the terrace overlooking Central Park. The cold Manhattan wind greeted her instantly, carrying the distant sound of traffic and winter air scented faintly with rain. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself tightly, staring out across the glowing skyline, while humiliation slowly crept beneath her skin like ice water. She had spent the last year believing she had won. Won the Billionaire, won the penthouse, won the spotlight. But standing inside that ballroom tonight, she realized something devastating. She had only inherited a vacancy Amara chose to leave behind. Behind the glass doors, William still watched Amara from across the room. Not with desire alone. Something far more painful. Recognition. He noticed the tiny details now. The calm way she listened before answering people. The elegance in her posture. The fact that she never interrupted anyone to prove her importance. 3 years ago, he used to overlook those things because they felt constant, almost ordinary beside the chaos of his empire. Now every small detail felt irreplaceable. "You are staring at her like a man attending his own funeral," a voice said beside him quietly. William turned to find Eleanor Whitmore standing near the champagne table. At 72, the legendary real estate investor remained one of the most respected women in New York business circles. She had known William since his 20s. More importantly, she had adored Amara from the beginning. William exhaled slowly. "I underestimated her." Eleanor lifted one eyebrow. "No, William. You underestimated what happens when a woman finally realizes her value." Her words landed harder than any public criticism ever could. Across the ballroom, Amara stood near the grand staircase, speaking with several female entrepreneurs invited through her scholarship foundation. One young woman in her early 20s looked close to tears while thanking her. "Your mentorship program changed my life," the woman admitted softly. "Nobody in this industry ever took me seriously before." Amara touched her hand gently. "Do not wait for permission to become extraordinary." William watched the interaction in silence, because suddenly he remembered another night years ago, before the wealth, before the headlines, before betrayal poisoned everything between them. He remembered Amara sitting on the kitchen counter of their first apartment in Brooklyn eating Chinese takeout from white cartons while explaining her dream of creating opportunities for women who felt unseen. Back then, he had kissed her forehead and promised they would build something meaningful together. Somewhere along the way, he built the empire. But she kept the soul. A burst of laughter near the orchestra pulled William back to the present as Amara smiled at something one of the guests said. The sound was soft, genuine, untouched by bitterness. That was the part he could not understand. How had she survived humiliation without becoming cruel? How had she transformed pain into grace instead of revenge? Most people would have returned tonight wanting to destroy him publicly. Amara simply walked into the room and allowed success to speak for itself. Near the terrace doors, Vanessa finally returned inside, but her confidence was gone now. She approached William carefully, studying his face. "You still love her," she said quietly. William looked toward Amara again as golden light reflected against the emerald fabric of her gown. His answer came slower than expected. "No," he said softly. "I think I finally understand that I never stopped." And across the ballroom, completely untouched by the confession she could not hear, Amara Kensington smiled beneath the chandelier light, like a woman who no longer needed anyone's regret to validate her worth. By 10 o'clock that night, the Grand Astoria Ballroom no longer felt like a charity gala. It felt like a coronation. Everywhere Amara walked, conversations paused for half a second before rising again, with admiration woven into every whisper. The woman New York society once dismissed as William Kensington's elegant wife had somehow returned as something far more dangerous. A woman with her own empire. Near the center staircase, a massive digital screen displayed the Foundation's annual donor presentation, while servers carried silver trays through clusters of politicians, celebrities, and billionaires. William stood near the edge of the ballroom pretending to listen to a hedge fund manager discuss international markets, but his attention drifted constantly back toward Amara. It was impossible not to notice the shift happening around her. People were not approaching her because she had once been married to him. They were approaching her because she had become powerful on her own. "Miss Bennet," a reporter called gently as Amara paused beside the floral installation near the stage. "There are rumors Bloom Noir is preparing a global launch next spring. Is that true?" Amara accepted another glass of sparkling water before answering. "Paris in April. Milan after that." The reporter looked stunned. "That is ambitious." Amara smiled softly. So was surviving. Several nearby guests fell silent at the answer. Not because she sounded bitter. She did not. She sounded honest. And honesty carried differently when spoken by someone who no longer needed approval from the room listening. William lowered his whiskey glass slowly. Those 3 words echoed in his chest with uncomfortable precision. So was surviving. Because for the first time, he realized he had never truly asked himself what life looked like for Amara after the divorce. He had assumed heartbreak weakened people, especially women who loved deeply. But Amara had disappeared into silence and somehow transformed it into strength. Across the ballroom, Vanessa watched another investor introduce his wife to Amara with visible excitement. Nobody introduced Vanessa to anyone anymore. The attention she once enjoyed had evaporated beneath the glow surrounding William's ex-wife. Worse, Vanessa noticed something she could no longer ignore. William had not touched her arm in nearly an hour. He had not smiled at her either. Instead, he stood frozen in quiet regret while another man admired the woman he used to call his wife. Near the orchestra stage, Marcus Delaney, founder of a luxury hotel empire, leaned slightly closer to Amara while speaking. "You know," he said warmly, "half the men in this room suddenly regret being married." Amara laughed softly, the sound elegant and unforced. "That sounds like a dangerous business problem." "No," Marcus replied carefully. "It sounds like the cost of underestimating a woman." William heard enough of the conversation to feel something sharp twist inside him. Not jealousy exactly. Something more humiliating. Awareness. Because Marcus was looking at Amara the way William should have years ago. With attention, respect, curiosity, not assumption. The orchestra shifted melodies again as golden light reflected across crystal glasses and marble floors polished so perfectly they mirrored the ballroom ceiling. Everything looked beautiful, expensive, untouchable. Yet William suddenly remembered a rainy night from 7 years earlier when he came home furious after losing an investor deal. He remembered throwing documents across the penthouse office while Amara quietly picked them up one by one without complaining. She had sat beside him on the floor afterward for nearly 2 hours, helping him rebuild the presentation from scratch. He won the deal the following week. The newspapers called him brilliant. He never told anyone she stayed awake until sunrise, helping him survive that failure. "You look sick," Vanessa said quietly beside him. William exhaled slowly without taking his eyes off Amara. "No," he answered. "I look like a man finally seeing the full price of his own arrogance." Across the ballroom, Amara stepped onto the small presentation stage after being invited by the foundation director to say a few words. The chandelier light wrapped around her emerald gown like liquid gold while hundreds of conversations slowly disappeared into silence. 3 years ago, she stood beside William during speeches like this, smiling politely while the room applauded him. Tonight, she stood alone. and somehow looked more powerful than anyone else in the building. The ballroom became completely silent the moment Amara stepped behind the microphone. Even the orchestra lowered its instruments respectfully as hundreds of guests turned toward the stage beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers. For years, William Kensington had been the voice associated with the foundation, the visionary, the leader, the man newspapers described as generous and untouchable. But standing there now in her emerald gown with calm grace resting across her shoulders like royalty, Amara looked like something far more difficult to ignore. Truth. She adjusted the microphone gently before speaking. 3 years ago, I stopped attending rooms where I had to convince people I belonged. Her voice carried smoothly across the ballroom. Controlled. Elegant. Every word deliberate. At first, silence felt like loss. But eventually, silence became space. Space to rebuild. Space to remember who I was before the world taught me to shrink myself for the comfort of others. Nobody moved. Nobody even reached for their champagne glasses anymore. William stood frozen near the back of the ballroom while her words slipped carefully through every defense he had built around himself. Because he remembered exactly how often Amara made herself smaller during their marriage. Smaller opinions. Smaller ambitions. Smaller presence. Not because she lacked power, but because she loved him enough to let him shine first. Amara continued softly. People often think heartbreak destroys women. Sometimes it does. But sometimes heartbreak introduces a woman to the version of herself she was always meant to become. A ripple of applause spread briefly through the ballroom before fading again into silence. Vanessa stood near the terrace doors with her jaw tight, but even she could not deny the effect Amara had on the room. This was no longer about beauty or wealth or revenge. This was about presence, the kind that could not be purchased or performed. Amara rested one hand lightly against the podium. Tonight is not about bitterness. It is about gratitude. Because losing what I thought was my future forced me to build something entirely my own. William lowered his eyes for the first time all evening. Every sentence felt less like accusation and more like quiet accountability. That somehow hurt worse. Near the front tables, several women wiped tears discreetly while younger entrepreneurs listened to Amara like she was speaking directly to every private disappointment they had ever survived. The ballroom no longer felt glamorous now. It felt personal, honest, human. For a long time, Amara said carefully, I believed loyalty meant enduring disrespect and silence. I thought love required self-sacrifice without limits. But real love does not ask someone to disappear in order to be chosen. William inhaled sharply at the sentence because suddenly another memory surfaced with painful clarity. 2 years before the divorce, Amara had canceled a speaking opportunity at a women's leadership conference because William complained it conflicted with one of his investor dinners. He remembered her smiling gently while saying, It is okay. Your event is more important. Back then, he accepted the sacrifice without hesitation. Standing in the ballroom tonight, he finally understood what those moments had cost her piece by piece over the years. Amara's eyes slowly moved across the crowd before settling briefly on William for the first time since taking the stage. Her expression remained calm, almost compassionate. Some people enter your life to love you, she said softly. Others enter your life to teach you how deeply you must love yourself first. The silence afterward felt enormous. Then applause erupted across the ballroom all at once. Loud, emotional, sustained. Guests rose from their seats one by one until nearly the entire room stood applauding her beneath the golden chandelier light. William remained motionless as the sound echoed through the Grand Astoria ballroom like judgment wrapped in admiration. Because while everyone else saw a powerful woman reclaiming her story tonight, William Kensington saw something far more devastating. He saw every moment he failed to protect the woman standing on that stage when she still belonged to him. The applause continued long after Amara stepped away from the microphone. It rolled across the ballroom in waves beneath the crystal chandeliers, while camera flashes followed her every movement like lightning trapped indoors. Yet through all the admiration surrounding her, Amara remained composed, calm, untouched by the noise. William watched her descend the stage steps slowly, graceful in emerald silk. While guests reached toward her with congratulations and admiration, she accepted politely, but never desperately. That was the difference now. 3 years ago, She used to seek connection in rooms like this. Tonight, she simply owned the space without needing anything from it. Amara. William's voice finally reached her near the edge of the ballroom beside the grand marble staircase. She paused carefully before turning toward him. For one suspended second, the rest of the room disappeared beneath the soft orchestra music and the distant sound of crystal glasses touching. William stepped closer, suddenly aware that this was the first real conversation they had shared in nearly 3 years. Up close, Amara looked even more radiant beneath the golden light, but it was not beauty alone that unsettled him. It was peace. The kind of peace people only find after surviving something painful enough to change them permanently. "Your speech was incredible," he said quietly. Amara offered a small nod. "Thank you." Her voice remained polite, controlled. No warmth, no cruelty. Somehow that hurt more than anger would have. William glanced briefly toward the ballroom, where guests still watched them discreetly from a distance. "Can we talk somewhere private?" For a moment, Amara studied him silently. Then she nodded once and followed him toward the quieter terrace overlooking Central Park. The cold New York air wrapped around them instantly as the glass doors closed behind them, muting the ballroom into distant music and blurred golden light. Snow had started falling lightly over Manhattan, tiny white flakes dissolving against the black sky above the city. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. William rested his hands against the stone balcony railing while trying to organize emotions he had spent years avoiding. "I did not understand how much I hurt you," he admitted finally. Amara looked out toward the skyline instead of at him. "No," she said softly. "You understood. You just believed I would stay anyway." The honesty in her answer struck him harder than accusation ever could. William swallowed slowly. "You were the best thing in my life, Amara." She smiled faintly at the sentence, but there was sadness in it now instead of hope. That realization came very late. Snow drifted quietly between them, while the lights of Manhattan shimmered below like scattered diamonds. William looked at her carefully. "Why did you never tell me you were building Bloom Noir?" Amara finally turned toward him then, her expression calm beneath the terrace lights. "Because every time I tried to become something outside of being your wife, you treated it like a distraction." William opened his mouth to respond, but no defense came. Because she was right. She had once shown him sketches for luxury packaging concepts at 2 in the morning while he answered emails without looking up. She had asked him to attend her first investor meeting years ago, and he canceled an hour before because of a golf dinner with clients. Back then, he believed there would always be another chance to support her dreams. "I was arrogant," he admitted quietly. "I thought loving you was enough." Amara's gaze softened slightly, but not with reconciliation. With understanding. "You loved me in the way powerful men sometimes love women," she said gently. "You wanted me close to your life, but you never truly made space for me to fully exist inside it." The words settled heavily between them while snow continued falling over the terrace. William felt regret move through him slowly, deeply, like something breaking open after years of denial. "I still love you," he confessed at last. Amara closed her eyes briefly before exhaling into the cold air. When she looked at him again, her expression carried compassion instead of longing. "I know," she whispered, "but I did not come back tonight for your love." William's chest tightened painfully. Amara stepped slightly closer, elegant and calm beneath the winter sky. "I came back," she said softly, "to prove to myself that losing you did not mean losing me." And standing there beneath falling snow while the city glowed beneath them, William Kensington finally understood the cruelest part of regret. Sometimes the person you finally learn how to love has already learned how to live without you. The snow was falling harder by the time Amara stepped back inside the Grand Astoria ballroom. Warm golden light wrapped around her once more as conversations resumed softly beneath the chandeliers. But something inside the room had shifted forever. People still smiled. Champagne still sparkled. The orchestra still played elegant music beside towering arrangements of white roses. Yet now the atmosphere carried something deeper than luxury. Respect. William followed several steps behind her in silence, his expression unreadable beneath the soft glow of the ballroom lights. For years, he had walked through rooms believing power came from wealth, control, and influence. Tonight, Amara had dismantled that illusion without raising her voice once. Near the entrance staircase, reporters immediately noticed her return. Cameras flashed rapidly while guests instinctively moved aside to create space for her path. "Miss Bennett," one journalist called out. "Do you have any final thoughts about tonight?" Amara paused gracefully near the bottom of the marble staircase. For a brief second, the ballroom became quiet again. She looked around slowly at the crowd surrounding her. The billionaires, the politicians, the socialites, the people who once watched her stand silently behind someone else's success. Then she smiled softly. "Sometimes losing the life you planned," she said calmly, "is the first step toward discovering the life you actually deserve." The sentence settled over the ballroom like falling snow. No bitterness, no revenge, just truth spoken by a woman who had survived enough disappointment to stop fearing honesty. The cameras continued flashing as applause rose gently around her once more. But Amara did not stay to absorb it. She simply thanked the foundation director quietly, accepted her coat from the valet attendant, and began walking toward the grand exit beneath the crystal chandeliers. William watched every step. Vanessa stood near the bar in complete silence now, understanding with painful clarity that she had never truly been competing against Amara. She had been competing against a memory William never stopped carrying. And memories built from genuine love are impossible to outperform with attention alone. Near the doors, Eleanor Whitmore approached William slowly. "You can still apologize properly," she said quietly. William stared toward Amara's retreating figure. Would it matter? Eleanor's expression softened with age-earned wisdom. "No," she admitted honestly. "But becoming a better man should never depend on whether you are forgiven." The words lingered with him as Amara reached the final staircase leading toward the hotel entrance. Outside, Manhattan shimmered beneath snowfall and city lights while black cars lined the curb waiting beneath the glowing awning. A driver stepped forward to open the back door of a sleek black Maybach. Before entering the car, Amara paused briefly at the top of the stairs. For the first time all night, she turned back toward the ballroom, toward William. Their eyes met across the distance one final time. No anger remained between them now, only the quiet ache of two people who once loved each other deeply but could not survive the imbalance of being valued differently. William started to move forward instinctively, but stopped himself halfway down the staircase. Because suddenly he understood something important. Love was not proven by finally chasing a woman after she rebuilt herself from the damage you caused. Real love would have protected her before she ever needed to become this strong. Amara gave the faintest nod, elegant and peaceful beneath the falling snow, before stepping into the waiting car. The door closed softly behind her. Then the Maybach disappeared into the glowing Manhattan night, while camera flashes reflected against the wet streets like scattered stars. William remained standing beneath the hotel lights long after the car vanished from sight. Around him, guests slowly returned to conversations and music and champagne as the gala continued. But none of it sounded the same anymore. Because somewhere between the crystal chandeliers, the emerald dress, the applause, and the snow falling over New York City, William Kensington had learned the most expensive lesson of his life. Some women do not return to reclaim the men who broke them. They return to prove they were never broken at all.